How's it going, guys? Welcome to the Talk4 Podcast. So excited to have you here today and show you this fantastic episode. Just want to say quickly that episodes like this one and all the ones before and the ones in future are made possible by people who subscribe. Hopefully, just like you. I'm going to ask you today if you can leave a subscribe, leave a follow, leave a rating, leave a like or a comment, and just support the show in the little ways that you can, like that. It makes a huge difference on my end. And quickly, just want to plug as well. I've taken 30 of the best episodes of this podcast and turned them into a fantastic book that goes into 150 secrets to greatness. Each one of those 30 episodes gets crunched down into 5 of the best key takeaways from the whole talk and turns them into a fantastic book. Highly recommend you check it out. Please support the show by grabbing a copy, either a paperback or an ebook. And I can't wait to show you guys this one today. So guys, without further ado, let's get over to the episode. How's it going, guys? Welcome to episode 164 of Talk4, the quickfire podcast where we ask 4 great questions to unique and interesting people behind the mic. Today is your host, Louis Skupien. That's me. Let me introduce our special guest for today, Joseph Paveway, Bledsoe III, who's going to be answering our questions today. So, Paveway, how you doing today, man? Welcome to the show. Super honored to have you here. And, dude, it's been a long time coming, this one. Glad we could make it happen.
Louis, it's great to finally make this one happen. I really appreciate you taking the time to have this awesome opportunity to tell some awesome stories and hear a little bit about each other. Thanks for taking the time.
Of course, no, it's my absolute privilege and a true honor to be able to do this today, man. I've been really looking forward to it. And can you just tell us a little bit about you then? So kind of 30 seconds, 60 seconds roughly, just, you went up to the bar and someone's just like, hey, Paveway, so what do you do? A bit about your day job, who you are, and a little snapshot into the life of you. Then we're going to roll into these 4 questions, and they're looking awesome today. So yeah, start us off there, and then we're going to dig into it on the big scale.
Awesome. Yeah, Louis, a little bit about myself. Grew up in a small town in Pennsylvania, Amish country, where there's more cornfields than people, maybe more cows than people as well. Since I was a little guy, in middle school, I wanted to attend the United States Air Force Academy, and I was blessed enough to get an appointment, and off to the races we went. So graduated from the Air Force Academy in 2011, did some school after the academy, and then got another dream job of flying the mighty F-15E Strike Eagle, and I've been doing that for about the last 15 years. Greatest jet in the Air Force. It's just an awesome opportunity to fly that and the people that I get to work with. Currently, I'm now at the United States Air Force Academy, back at my alma mater, which is a blessing in itself, teaching cadets and the next generation of warfighters, where I spend a lot of time focused on air power and what it looks like in the Pacific and kind of the next generation, the next iteration of air power as we're moving forward. Most importantly, my most important job is being married to my beautiful wife, my high school sweetheart, Alicia. And we got 3 wonderful kids, Trayson, Daxton, and Brinley. 2 boys and a little girl. And they just keep me busy and more gray hair as we work it out. So it's a little bit about me. Let's open it up to more and we can dig in.
Yeah, let's do it. That is a great little intro right there. And you're an awesome man. I can't wait to hear all about this then. So, as you said, fascinating career, starting with time at the US Air Force Academy, leading to the role in the F-15 as an evaluator pilot. Come on then, let's go. So what initially drew you to this kind of a career, basically? So in the Air Force, how did your experiences shape your perspective on leadership and air power, and just generally a bit of the backstory on this career path then? So was it a family thing? Was it a you thing? What interested in it for you? Top Gun? What was it?
Top Gun. Everybody loves Top Gun, right? I guess the real argument is if you're a Top Gun 1 or a Top Gun 2 guy. So I come from no military background in my family. I'm the first in my family to join the military. My brother followed in my footsteps. He's a Navy aviator, a test pilot in the Navy. So pretty cool that 2 brothers are pilots, but the Air Force is better. How it all started was I have an older cousin who attended the Air Force Academy, and it kind of always looked up to him as an older brother, a mentor of mine. And it kind of opened the eyes to what the military is, what the academies are, and that kind of set me on a path to where I am today. Come from a really, like I mentioned in the intro there, a really rural, small town. No one really leaves that often. So it was a big step for me to join the military, but it was one of those goals, and I was blessed enough to achieve it and graduate from the academy. Fast forward, when I was a cadet at the Air Force Academy, I came in. Airplanes were always this thing I knew in the Air Force, but it wasn't my initial goal, actually. My initial goal was to be a doctor in the Air Force. I wanted to get into medicine. So I came to the Air Force Academy, studied biology as my undergrad, and focused a lot of time and effort, as my classmates would say. I was a big nerd, a lot of time in the books, getting ready to go to med school. I had one of those early life crisis my junior year, rising into my senior year, my first year here at the Academy, where I had the opportunity to spend some time overseas with a flying unit and got my kind of eyes open to what flying actually is in the Air Force and what they do and what the mission is. And it kind of planted a seed. After that summer, coming back to my senior year, I had the opportunity to fly down at the airfield. So we have an aero program here at the Academy where you get about 10 to 12 rides and a Cessna, and that was the first opportunity I ever touched an airplane, right? Ever flew in one, and I fell in love. I absolutely fell in love, and I came to this realization: you can always get into medicine, you can't always get into this flying Air Force gig, and that kind of changed the trajectory of my life at 21, right? So pulled my med school applications, put my name in the hat for flying, and the rest is history. Went off to pilot training after graduating and dropped the mighty F-15E, and here we are. So all that to say, life can throw you curveballs. Embrace them. Embrace them is the way I look at that. So you asked a little bit there about leadership and AirPower. So let's talk about leadership first. I've been blessed to have been in a lot of leadership opportunities in my life so far. I think one of the most pivotal one, I'm going to go back to the Academy, my time at the Academy, and it was when I was voted to be the class president of the mighty class of 2011, the class of Robin Olds here at USAFA. And in that capacity, I knew nothing about the military, nothing about peer leadership, but my classmates saw something in me to lead this class, right? So a lot of failure initially, and it taught me that there are two kinds of leadership and a perspective that I take on it. One is vertical leadership, right? Up and down. Very much in the military, we rely on that rank structure, formalities of that, right? And that there's leadership there 100%. What I learned more here at the Academy is what I call horizontal leadership, this peer leadership, because it's really hard to lead a class of 1,000 fellow cadets that are all your same age, that we maybe have our own rank structure here as cadets, but really we're a lot of peers. And how do you motivate and gain trust of your peers was something I really put a lot of effort into learning about. And I think we'll talk about it a little bit later, but huge role is mentorship, feedback. I learned those skills. I started to learn those skills here at USAFA, and I hopefully am continuing to sharpen those skills as I go forward. But that's one that really instilled in me the values of leadership and how I view it today. Next, you asked a little bit about AirPower. Louis, I'm going to be 100% honest. I didn't think about AirPower until a little bit later in my career. AirPower was just flying airplanes and doing the job, right? I will say, as my time back here at USAFA as a fellow with the Institute for Future Conflict, it's allowed me a little bit of headspace and white space to think about what the future of flying airplanes looks like and how important controlling the air is for our country and our nation and our national command leadership. Okay. And we'll talk a little bit more about that, I think, as we go forward. But initially, AirPower was just like looking up in the air and like applying some formula of power to that. But it's taken some time to really grasp what that looks like now. And I'm excited to talk about it. So I would say, how do these all combine into my career and where I saw myself the last 15 years and where I hopefully will get back to flying the jet is in a fighter squadron, right? So fighter squadrons fly fighters. We got to control the air, right? So start to think about air power and what our mighty Strike Eagle can do for the grander force and how we control the air, as well as my leadership style. So in a fighter squadron, as you know, call signs are a really important thing. We rely very heavily on peer leadership. There's no rank in the debrief. You may have heard that before, where we remove the rank on our shoulders and everyone is a peer to sharpen the skills of each other. And I think that peer leadership that I learned at USAFA has really played pivotal for my time in a fighter squadron, where that is such a huge part of our culture. It doesn't mean that we don't have our customs and courtesies, but right, we got to sharpen each other's skills, where sometimes someone lower ranked than me might be my flight lead, and I have to listen to them for that day. And I think that really instills confidence and what makes us the best Air Force out there.
Absolutely. That's absolutely perfect. I mean, what an incredible career, and the work you're doing right now is mega, man. So I think later on we're going to dig into everything about the F-15 and the combat hours and stuff too. But let's just dig into the current work then first. So currently focusing, as you mentioned, the future of air power. So specifically Agile Combat Employment ACE. Can you explain ACE and its importance in modern military strategy? I mean, how do you see ACE shaping the future of air combat, and what key challenges do you foresee as it evolves? And a bit about your role as well.
Yeah, Louis, we could spend all day talking about this topic because it's kind of the cutting edge topic of the Air Force right now, right? So let's take the 30,000-foot view first. What is ACE, and what is the Air Force trying to pursue? So, in my opinion, again, just my opinion here, the Air Force needs to provide the combatant commanders and our command leadership the ability to control the air. That's what the Air Force does. We need to control the air to employ effects to beat our enemy, right? So if you take that as the goal and the objective of the Air Force first, I think we now have to get beyond flying cool airplanes and all the things we can do and say, what does it take to control the air in a modern fight against peer competitors? And I think that is where ACE initially started in the conversation around Agile Combat Employment. So if the nature of war is standard, as Clausewitz would say, right? I'll put my nerd hat on for a second. The character is changing. So if you look at the Air Force in the last 30 years, we were embedded in the Middle East, in the global war on terror, where the structures and methodology that the Air Force employed upon was we had these massive hubs of bases where we could fly from, and everything was there, and they were safe and not contested. Well, as we look to a peer competitive fight, potentially in the Pacific, we don't have that capability anymore, right? But that's not an assumption. That's a fact that we have to start planning off of. So similar to you getting your Amazon package in 2 days, where we can build these massive warehouses, we can't do that anymore. And the solution, as we're continuing to pursue it, is Agile Combat Employment. Now, is ACE a strategy? Is it an operation? Is it tactic? I think we could debate that all day long. And I've had many conversations with our senior military officials on, sir or ma'am, what do you see this looking like? And I think we're ironing some of that out, whether that's in doctrine or practice or exercises. When are we going to do, and how are we going to do this? So first, let's look at it as a strategy. I think it as a strategy is a great way to strategic alignment for the Air Force is what I want to frame that around. This is a way for the Air Force to focus on training, new concepts, push the force in a new direction, a new outside of the GWAT thinking, a new character for the Air Force, right? Is it a strategy that we can fight a complete campaign, a complete war based on ACE? I don't think so, because the enemy always gets a vote, right? What's that Mike Tyson quote? Your plan always changes after you get punched in the mouth, right? So
That's it.
with ACE, you can only plan so far. Yeah, right. You can only plan so far out in the future with being agile until the enemy gets a vote, and then your plan changes. So for a complete strategy, I'm not sure if we would employ it that way, but in terms of force alignment, a strategic alignment in the Air Force, I think that's where we're at. Next level of war, operational level, I think it's there, right? At the campaign level, we could potentially have an agile combat employment where we maneuver around a lot for a duration of time X. What that is, I'm not sure, but I think that's maybe where we're looking at. More realistically, I think of it more as a tactic. Tactic meaning we do it for a very short duration, whether that's offensive in nature or defensive in nature. So let's look at agile combat employment and what it really means at the tactical level. So it means I'm going to land my F-15 at an austere location that only has maybe 10 or 12 fellow airmen that not only have to refuel my plane, defend the base, put bombs, bullets back in the airplane, feed themselves, land a C-130, get back on that C-130 and depart, all within inside the enemy's targeting cycle, right? So think very quick, and that's the agile part of it. Now that can be offensive in nature, meaning, hey, we got to reload so the fighters and the offensive capabilities of the Air Force go forward and do the job. Or it could be defensive in nature. We just need to be here, defend this base for a short period of time because there's another asset that needs to do some other mission around that. So that's where I see ACE looking as this type of maneuver warfare that I know our sister services have spent a lot of time thinking about. And it's the Air Force's attempt to get into that maneuver, quick, fast-paced style of war. That is very different than how we operated the last 30 years. So there's a lot of institutional learning that we're taking part of there. Does that kind of give you a good Paveway's one ACE 101, or
that is a
does
great
that
ACE
work
101.
on it?
That's a great ACE 101. Let's go into what your role is then. So how are you kind of pitching into that fight? And beyond that as well, just a little bit about kind of, what the work actually looks like, because we understand the strategy now and the 101 of it too, but on the practical level, what work is being done to actually improve this? And what are some of the kind of, I guess, biggest opportunities for innovation in the next decade in this area?
Yeah, for sure. Right now, I'm not actually out flying, right? I fly a desk as a wannabe academic, hopefully getting back to the jet after this assignment. However, what I will say is my previous assignment at Mountain Home Air Force Base with the 366 Fighter Squadron, Fighter Wing and the 391st Fighter Squadron, we did this stuff. Excuse me. We were out practicing. I'm up, they see me, move, kind of operations within the Air Force. So taking my experiences from my previous assignment and now sitting in an academic kind of arena, I have the opportunity to go look at our doctrine and our tactics, techniques, and procedures and give my advice and my inputs into shaping future exercises and doctrine and TTPs, because I'm a little bit separated from the guys and gals doing the job, and I have a little bit more of free space to think about the second, third order effects that go into ACE. So with that, it's not only what's going good, right? So I think the Air Force is clearly practicing this at the massive scale all throughout the force, but it's also a way that I spent a lot of time looking at the challenges that I face firsthand from being on the ground and trying to address those and get senior leader buy-in on how to fix some of those challenges. For example, one of the challenges is the style in which we deployed airplanes and the resourcing that we were so used to during GWAT doesn't work in this Agile Combat Employment. There is something to speak to the efficiency of our air tasking order and the way we deploy in stable operations. As soon as the enemy punches you in the mouth and we have to go agile, the efficiency and agility butt heads sometimes. And it's working through those problem sets to make the best decisions with what information you have at as fast as you can to ultimately achieve mission success and commander's intent, right? And it's pushing some of those decisions down to the lowest level and buying buy-in from commanders all the way down to the lowest ranking airmen to get some of that stuff done. I think the other challenge that we face with communicating to our airmen is this culture. Why does the Air Force do this? Why are we doing this? And trying to sell that message as change is hard, right? Change is hard. Why are we doing this? And telling the why. And I get to the opportunity to do that here at the Air Force Academy, where the cadets are sitting in, the academic, getting ready to commission. And it's like, okay, cadets, this is what the Air Force is moving towards. Let's get some buy-in now, because if not, we lose. And you want to be on the winning team, and this is how we win. So that's kind of my opportunity now, is teaching the cadets. I get to sit in the awesome Department of Management, where I help with the logistics minor, which is the biggest minor here at USAFA. And it doesn't necessarily mean we need to learn how Amazon and UPS do logistics. We got to get this Air Force logistics thing right. And those are some of the problems that we're handing these cadets, that they think way outside the container and have awesome solutions towards. Ultimately, they don't know it's ACE, but that is where they're helping shape the future of the force.
Right. Got it. It's a hell of a mission. Sounds like something that's had a massive effect in all this for you then is obviously the flying and the combat and the F-15 as well. So over 344 combat hours in support of Operation Inherent Resolve. You've seen firsthand the challenges of modern warfare. So how did your combat experience shape your leadership style essentially? And what lessons from the battlefield do you feel like are kind of carrying into the work that you're doing out there today with ACE? I feel like there's going to be a lot of correlation there, and I'd love to dig into some of those things. Also found that with past guests, so many of the combat stories and so many of the combat experiences have been critical to shaping their leadership style now and the jobs they've gone on to do. So I'd love to know what some of those things are. And if you are able to tie in some kind of actionable stuff too that people can take away from that as well in those lessons, that's even better and cherry on the cake.
Yeah, let's do it. So I had the opportunity to deploy with the world famous Rocketeers, the 336 Fighter Squadron, brothers and sisters in arms, still some of my closest friends. My first fighter squadron, so you always love the first the most there. So I got to deploy in support of Operation Inherent Resolve, so eliminating ISIS was our mission objective, right? So some of the challenges I saw while deployed was, I think the one that really hits home the most and why I keep doing what I do is there are people in the world who, despite our best efforts, want to cause harm to those people that don't agree with them. Ideologically, religiously, you name it, they just want to cause harm. And it's up to us, some of us who have the courage and willingness to defend them, to keep doing the job, right? We live in a broken world, and that's the nature of how we live and the world we're in. And some of us are called to protect those that can't, right? And I think that's just one of those things that is enduring in warfare. And I'm proud to be on the best team that helps those people that can't help themselves, right? Second, technology is not a panacea, right? I think the Air Force is definitely probably the service of all the service more than others that is dedicated and loves technology. However, from multiple experiences, when the computer gives you the black screen or blue screen of death, you have to be able to adapt and figure out ways to solve problems and not just throw your hands up and say, I don't have the widget that I need. Find ways to solve problems. Technology is a crutch in many ways, and if you bring the approach that technology will not solve your problems, problem solvers solve problems. Technology is one tool that we use. That's one thing I really learned in that deployment, where we didn't always have the most operating technology, but we got the mission done. Next is, I think, one that translates to many different careers, whether that's in the military or outside of the military. People have to make hard decisions with what information they have available to them. And those decisions are done with the best judgment and the best intent in hopes to achieve mission success, right? There was many situations in the deployment where not necessarily me, but others had only so much information. They had to act. They decided to act. And ultimately, I think they sleep well with their decisions at night because that was what was presented to them. And though it's really hard to practice that, it's really hard to put people in situations where you have to act now with this information, because we live in an information age and we want to grasp for more straws of information to make the best decision. But whether you're a leader or the youngest wingman in the squadron, with what information you have to rely on your training and your best judgment. And I think that's where we as a U.S. Air Force come strides above others, because that's the culture we have. Next one is there's always someone having a worse day than you. Always someone having a worse day than you. Show grace and have empathy. When you see someone having a bad day, lend a lending ear. And if you need it, find someone that will give you that ear. Right? Deployments are tough. There's a lot of emotions, a lot of things that happen in them. And you never know what someone's facing until you peel back that onion and see what's going on. One of my best advice given to me from one of my previous commanders was have intrusive leadership. How often have you walked by a friend or someone and said, how's it going? And they just say, it's going okay. Take the 3.91 seconds later and ask a follow-up and say, no, really, how's it going? Be intrusive to figure out what's going on. And I think that's really important as you're moving forward in whether that's you're a leader or you're just having an interaction with your spouse or your friends, right? That's really important to have that kind of mindset. And then last one that I try to do every day is make every day better than the previous. Debrief culture needs to be our norm. And I bring that as one of my values as being a fighter pilot that is instilled in me. Debrief culture has to be our norm. You have to be able to take the good, the bad, and the ugly and learn from each one of those. There's a great proverb in the Bible, iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpens another. And I try to live that as a life value and I ask others to do the same that are around me, because I think that's ultimately how we get to be the best of ourselves and the sharpest person we can be.
I love that. Some really, really great points there. I would love to know, because we love the There I Was stories on this show, and there's been so many great ones before, whether that's to do with the call signs, whether that's to do with, backing up the points made in these things and showing those lessons where they came in. I'd love to know any particular stories in flight where these lessons really became obvious to you. So we understand the philosophies, and I think everyone knows how to be a high performance person deep down and stuff. But sometimes it's that experience, or that experience basically, where you need to then realize, actually this is where putting those reps in has come to count. Just wondering, any stories there where one of those points or a couple of those points really, really backed you up, and you learned a lot from it. So anything you got for us there?
Yeah, I'll take the checks in the mail. I can tell you the story about my call sign, because I think it hits on a lot of these. So there I was. My call sign is Paveway. I'm named after the mighty GBU-24, which is a 2,000-pound laser guided bomb. So I was in training with one of my closest friends, and we were supposed to hit a target, simulating a cave. This weapon was supposed to be dropped at a certain range from the target, and I flew past that range significantly. Let's just leave it at that. Very significantly, but still released the weapon. In that, I lost complete spatial awareness of where I was, and that bomb missed the target and flew off the range by about 5 miles, which is a really big deal. Really big deal. And that's one where you got to go talk to the squadron commander and the higher ups and kind of, own up to your mistake. So I was clearly having a bad day, right? Clearly needed debriefed, and I had to learn from my mistakes, right? So there I was, really down on myself, hooked the ride, failed the ride, and I'll never forget my flight commander coming over, my weapons officer coming over to me and saying, "Hey, we all mess up. It's now what you do with that, right? You can let this snowball, or you can just get back in the cockpit, fly the mission tomorrow. What do you want to do?" The answer was clear. I had to get back in the jet and do this thing again and do it right. All right. Also spent a lot of time talking through, like, hey, what went into that? Like, did your dog die that morning? Like, this is the first time you've ever had one of those kind of instances of like losing spatial awareness and real bad. So we took that intrusive leadership and really, we peeled the onion back of like, what were the root causes of, at the time, the new guy messing up versus, and clearly now Paveway on that one. I think the other one too that is really important is, in hindsight, looking back on it, clearly everyone wants to ask you what your call sign is and how you got it. But I try to take that as a teaching moment. And I had to go talk in front of the other squadrons of like, here's what I did, here's why I messed up. And I took that more of as a punishment, because, you get up and stand up and you got to kind of say, my bad, I messed up. Here's how you don't do that. But if you take that a step further and you explain some of those lessons outside the flying community. I mean, I tell the story to cadets here at the academy, and it's like, you don't have to know how to drop a GBU-24 Alpha, but here's some things that you can pull from that hopefully instill some leadership lessons, some character lessons that may or may not apply in your life. But if it does, I hope it helps sharpen you, right? So it's a little bit about how I got named Paveway III. Joe Bledsoe III, Paveway III. There we go. That's the story.
That's a good one, man. We love a call sign story, but often very hard to get out of people. So I appreciate you coming out with that one and telling us all about it. That's a good story, and it's
It-
so true. You don't get it right always, and it doesn't matter how cool you sound. If fighter pilot or professional sports person, whatever, we all have a bad day, right? And that goes back to exactly what you were saying. We always someone's having a worse day than you. Right. And it's just so important to recognize that and just learn from those mistakes. Something I've taken from doing 162 podcast episodes here as well, and speaking to so many fighter pilots and people in the military. That debrief is so important to me. Even if it's on a small scale, and I'm not exactly getting out the jet every day and having to talk about combat stuff and dropping bombs and how all that went, but just at the end of every day and every week, just like a 5 minute checkup on how the day went. How did my the fitness stuff go, business, sleep, recovery, things like that. Just doing a checkup and just making some notes on where I could improve the next day. Really important to me, especially on a Sunday evening as well, where I can just review that whole week. How did it go? What am I going to do in the next one? In terms of your debrief stuff, any lessons there to take away and for people to apply? I guess the main thing about this podcast as well, I find, is that I always want to make sure people can understand how they can relate to an industry that's completely different from theirs. So some people might be thinking, how the hell can I learn a lesson about debriefing from a fighter pilot? I go and work an office job and I work on the desk or whatever, right? How can we tie that into our own lives too, and kind of create a version of that that's going to really benefit people, like it's almost benefited me too.
Yeah, I think Louis, the way I look at that, and as I work in the management department, which does a lot of business thought, right? I think ways that translate the best, at least where I sit right now, is you said you sit down on a Sunday and kind of chalk up your week, right? I would hope as well on that Sunday you kind of set your goals for the upcoming week,
Yeah,
right? Because if you don't set those goals, what are you chalking up? What are you evaluating, right? So I think it all starts with from the target backwards. The target being my goals for this week are hit the gym X amount of times, do so many podcasts or whatever your goals are for the week. And then that's what you set your accountability to. One thing in the flying world and that we do in the debrief is every mission has mission objectives and tactical objectives, right? And at the end of the debrief, we take a green marker or a red marker and we say plus, minus. Plus being in green, minus being in red. And hopefully when you look back on it, you have more green pluses. But if you have a bunch of red minuses up there, okay, let's spend some time thinking about, were these the right objectives? Were these the right goals? Did we train correctly? And if not, that reevaluates what the next week might look like in terms of personal, professional, mental, whatever growth that you want to have. That's the way I think I translate the most, is always work from your target backwards. That translates to from mission objectives is probably goals. And then at the end of the week or at the end of your said time period, chalk it up. And if you do see a minus there, have some learning from it, right? I think we often spend most of the time learning from our failures, but also be humble and give yourself some kudos for the pluses that you have up there as well. Don't always focus on the red, focus on the green, and that's a delicate balance as you work through those.
I like that. I feel like it's probably fairly easy and straightforward to integrate into that if you're already within the community. So if you talk about the fighter pilot community, everyone does that already, right? So it's pretty easy to be on the same team and understand what you guys are doing, because you all know that it has to happen and there's that accountability within the community to keep you doing that. But if someone's listening in who really believes in that vision, thinks that would be really beneficial for my team or my business or my family even, or whatever that might be, how would you go about integrating that sort of a community thing, and applying it into somewhere where it's not so familiar, right? So not a community that's familiar with it, not one that takes too much accountability, not one that debriefs at the end of a week or at the end of a day and stuff in the business. How would you go about integrating what you guys do there so well into such a great effect into a community that knows nothing about it?
Yeah, I think the way to approach that is you have to have an attitude of continual improvement, right? This is just one model out there that helps with that continual improvement that clearly comes from the flying background. There's other ways to focus on continual improvement. Project management professionals have ways out there, spreadsheets. There's different ways. If this way if the fighter pilot debrief is one way that you are inspired and something you would like to do, right? There's tons of podcasts, TED Talks, companies even out there that are focused on this enterprise and will come in and give consulting, right? That's probably at the monetary and professional level. I think there's ways as well to do this on just the peer-to-peer leadership. One way is find someone who will hold you accountable, right? Hold you accountable to those goals. So Louis, if you set your goals on Sunday, but you're not a person that wants to debrief it the following Sunday, find someone in your life who just drops you a text or sets up a text message reminder alert that drops you a note and says, "Hey, Louis, how'd your week go?" Right? And that's that way of just instilling that character of debrief, that character of continual improvement into your life. And that's why I'm such a huge proponent on mentorship and menteeship, because I think that accountability is really important, and that starts that progress towards continual improvement.
Oh, I like it, man. That's a really, really good one. Talking about mentorship, then let's dig into this next question then. So you've earned a master's in public policy and are currently working as an Air Force Intermediate Development Education Fellow. Oh my God, that's a mouthful. Right then, so how has your education outside of flying helped shape your strategic thinking and leadership approach? Additionally, you've mentioned your commitment to mentorship, as you said. So what role has mentorship played in your development, and how do you mentor others in the Air Force right now?
Yeah, I know that's a lot of use Air Force things that we just make acronyms. So I appreciate you reading all those out there. So you're right. I was blessed enough to go get a master's degree after graduating from the Air Force Academy. Remember, I would study biology, and then I jumped into the public policy world, which was a huge new environment for me. But I learned a lot there about the importance of hearing others' perspectives. And I think I try to bring some of that back here to USAFA. So as a IDE fellow with the Institute for Future Conflict, one thing our institute really focuses on is the future character of war and what it might look like, right? So a lot of guessing and a lot of thinking about what it might look like. And there's no bad answer because we're all guessing, right? And it's awesome to be back at USAFA. I never thought I'd be back here thinking about that kind of stuff and influencing cadets. And one thing this job has taught me is to lean on others' experiences. So Louis, if you see a nail, right, you're going to think I need a hammer. Okay. I think that's a common analogy that people use. This job has taught me to like, wait, there might be someone standing in the corner that has a nail gun or wood glue or other options that could solve these problems. And the IFC and USAFA has given me the opportunity to interface and meet people from different departments within the US government with private industry that is getting after some epic technology that's not a panacea necessarily, but some awesome technology and some awesome stuff to solve problems that I didn't even know were a problem. So it's collaboration towards towards problem solving, right? Which is I used to think the F-15 could solve all your problems, which it can solve most of them, but there's other ways to potentially solve those problems out there as well. And I think that's what this job has given me the opportunity, a little bit more breadth out there. Now to like mentorship, right? Mentorship is huge in my life. And it started, I think, when I was in high school, as I was trying to navigate whether I wanted to join the military, not coming from a military background, asking questions. And I really spent a lot of time and effort leaning on the experiences and expertise of others. Not because I want to necessarily do what they do, but because I value their inputs and their thoughts on what that looks like in my life. I think one of it weighs heavy on my heart, right? Because this isn't just Paveway decisions for Paveway, but I'm also married to my beautiful spouse, and I have three little kids that my decisions affect them directly, especially being in the military, right? So I want to go in with the most informed information, and I think mentors are a great way to do that. We spoke a little bit before too about accountability. I ask a lot of mentors to keep me accountable because I often chase rabbits, and those goals and might not be aligned with what I really want to be doing. And I think mentors help a lot with that to keep that Sunday debrief that we mentioned and those text messages, those phone calls of, hey, give me an update. No, really, what's the update? What are you really pursuing? And that's important. I try to turn that around to the best I can do, and and have mentees as well. I will say that's something that I really want to continue to get better at because I've been invested in and have had a ton of awesome opportunities because of mentors, and I want to pay that forward. And I don't think there's a better spot right now than being at the United States Air Force Academy and having a bunch of cadets constantly swinging by asking for advice. And I try to take that one level deeper. It's not just one-time advice, but let's follow up on these discussions. Let's follow up on these decisions. And I hope that they lean in on that ultimately because I want to see the next generation better than my generation, right? Let's make it better out there for those. So I know that was a big question of what I'm doing in terms of mentorship and role here at USAFA. Hopefully that one answered it.
Certainly did. Man, what are your thoughts on these cadets then coming through the USAFA then? So I'd love to get your vision on this. So, you know, when you went through the academy, what's the difference? Like you were obviously around the community, you saw what was going on, you probably felt the problems. What's the differences between now and then? And also with these young cadets who I'm sure, you know, sharp as nails, are you seeing any kind of trends in terms of like modern world problems that need that mentorship to kind of set them on the right path and be ready for a great career in the Air Force? You know, what are some of those common things that they maybe need to unlearn, or just anything there pointer wise, just to make them just absolutely effective as anything?
Yeah, I will say cadets are awesome. This is the best school in the country, hands down. I'm super proud of this institution and where it's going. I bleed Falcon Blue, as you read about. So I would say one thing I've really noticed from being in the classroom and around cadets compared to when I was here, back when it was hard, is what we would say back in the hard days, black boot days. The cadets now are very much more in tune than I ever was, and I'm gonna throw a blank kind of gross assumption out there for my classmates, but let me anchor this in when I was a cadet, we knew what we were getting into. And I mean that by the global war on terror was very much present in our lives. And we knew when we commissioned, whether we were flying or in a support function or whatever, when we commissioned, we were probably going to Afghanistan, Iraq, or Syria. Right? That was the GWAT was in full tilt. That was what was in the front page of the news. That's what we knew we were going. So our assumptions after we graduated was, how do I get ready for this specific problem set and be the best officer that I can be towards global war on terror? I highlight that now compared to what I see cadets of today focused on. Cadets today, while the Middle East is still an issue, right? I'm not going to sugarcoat that. They are much more inquisitive on what they think they are going to do. And I mean that in the terms of great power competition and the what ifs of where the US military might be used in a peer competition fight. And it's compared to where I knew I was going to Iraq or Afghanistan or Syria, they're like, what if we have to fight in the South Pacific? What does that look like? And they're much more in tune to geopolitics, economic behaviors, the problems of logistics than I ever was. And I think that is a huge benefit to them because they are inquisitive by nature because they don't necessarily know what their job is going to be. And that is just based on the uncertainty of what geopolitics look like tomorrow. When it comes to with that, I think there's no right answer, which can be frustrating at times, right? I don't know what this might apply, but let's prepare for it. And that's what's a huge part of the Institute for Future Conflicts job is let's think these through the second, third, fourth order effects so that you've at least thought these through in hopes that they never happen. But if they do happen, you're at least now put some brain bites behind that. And yeah, I think that is where I see the biggest difference with the cadets. Way smarter, way more athletic than I ever was. Which is only awesome to see, with a super inquisitive minds asking questions that daunt me when they're asked to me. And sometimes I have to say, I don't know, what do you think? And I often get a great answer. And that's why I think the school's awesome in helping solve some of those problems.
That's fantastic. Really, really good stuff, and exciting times, and a great bunch of people you get to work with a great guy showing them the way right there as well. Yeah, something I want to talk about too, which might be really beneficial to those youngsters, and also I think just to everyone generally as well, even me. So someone I'm quite close with recently introduced me to this kind of concept of the three pillars, right? Like you got to have all three pillars right, and yeah, for him, I believe it was business, family, fitness. And I think, that's probably a bit interchangeable between people. But if you get all those three things right, they all support each other. But any one thing of those goes wrong, and then the others kind of struggle a bit too. And I've known, obviously, through this podcast, you've mentioned your family like a whole lot, man. And I think also with these cadets too, so easy to get so ingrained in the hustle and the bustle and trying to be the best they can that they forget the family side of things too. And it looks like you've got that balance down to a T. Even me, I struggle with that too sometimes, we're generally just with work going really well and working super hard and doing all this podcast and stuff too. So easy just to get carried away and so passionate about that. And then almost kind of like, forget to spend a bit of time with the family and make that, a priority. So I don't know. You seem like a man who's done it and done it really well. Any advice for me and just all those cadets out there going forward for managing that?
Louis, we're always learning, man. Perception is 90%, I guess, right? Louis, I think the way I look at that is I think the pillars thing is awesome. I'm going to translate that to how I look at it, and I have three values that I try to build my life around, and constantly am checking in on them in that debrief nature, and that's family, faith, and fighter pilot. Okay, so family we've talked about, right? My family is I try to make all decisions through the lens of my family and how it's going to affect us, right? Whether that's here in the Air Force or coaching my son's baseball team, or I just signed up to help my middle child learn how to run cross country, right? Like all those things, if you have that pillar set, I think is really important. Faith as well, right? You can look at that as whether you're a believing Christian or whatever your faith is, or your spiritual health. I think it's really important to take that time and those quiet moments to reflect. Whether how you do that, I don't care. Just I think that's really important. And the last is fighter pilot. I think that can come across as cocky, and that's not my intent there. It comes across as it's an attitude. One of my biggest not mentors, but I'll call it heroes in the Air Force is Robin Olds, and he has a great quote on the attitude of a fighter pilot, and the way you bring your personality and your approach towards life is really important. And I think like being on time, looking professional, being squared away is really, really important. And how I balance all those is constant checkups on each one. And if one pillar becomes more important than the others, I have this great kind of contract with my wife who knows the term knock it off. Right. So my partner in crime, Alicia, knock it off is sacred words in the jet, right? In any flying opportunity, knock it off means everybody just fly straight, get on the round dials, assess what's happening, calm down, take a break from the fight. So if I ever hear the words knock it off in my house, those are just as sacred there because something's out of sync, right? And that is really important to teach people in your life that have influence on you and impact. Those in my opinion, in my stance, the sacred words of knock it off is how I go, okay, what's going on? What pillar, what is out of sync? And that's how I approach it, right? And there are people that can call knock it off, whether it's a mentor, my wife, my kids, they use it not great sometimes, but they know that that means dad's going to listen up or Paveway's going to listen up because something's out of sync. And I really appreciate you bringing that pillars, that it's influenced your life, because I think a lot of people are, if they sit down and what are my values, what are my pillars, it will really help align their goals and the efforts they put in day to day.
I love that. Really great points, man, and completely spot on everywhere there. I think that's awesome. Only other thing I want to ask now then. So you've mentioned a few things there which are quite exciting. You've talked about trying to get back up in the jet, and we know that you're doing all these cool things right now too, and you're doing some big work. So how does that all kind of fit into the next 5 or 10 years? It sounds like you've got a lot of spinning plates, any kind of big priorities there or obvious kind of progressions we can look forward to seeing. I guess as well, what impact do you hope to have, obviously in the Air Force, but also beyond that too? I know you're doing some community work, teaching some baseball, and you may find that a couple of those kids want an ear to listen to. What does it look like for you?
Yeah, awesome. So I would say professionally, a goal of mine is to get back to the F-15E and be a squadron commander. It's been a goal of mine since I started flying the jet. I really want to be an influence and have an impact on our community. And I don't mean that just necessarily flying jets, but just being back around the squadron and taking and if I'm blessed enough to have the opportunity to command, put all my effort and energy into taking a squadron to its most best ability out there, right? Like that's I think is an awesome opportunity. So we'll see if the Air Force gives me that opportunity. That's a goal of mine. If not, I want to stay in and around this air power discussion, right? I think it's really important as we look at this massive enterprise of the Air Force. You'll see some stuff as I continue to publish and write and brief on this to continue the discussion of changing that culture of what we do in the Air Force and why we do it and how we do it. I think is really important. Other things, like you mentioned, stay involved with my kids' lives in the community as well as in the graduates' lives of the Air Force Academy. Huge proponent of the Long Blue Line, which is our graduate community and making it better for everyone out there, whether that's helping them find a job, doing awesome things in the Air Force, or just making the Long Blue Line the best it's ever been. Those are some of my passions, right? Make it better is I think just a good attitude to have in moving forward. Right. So that's those are the goals in the short term in the next 5 to 10 years. But we'll see what happens. You never know what tomorrow's going to throw you. And as long as you take it in stride, all is good.
I like it. And let's do the opposite of that too then. So Paveway, obviously that's future you, and you've learned a lot of lessons, man, along the way. But if you could rewind as well and have that little moment just to speak to a very young version of you, so around that kind of 10 to 13 maybe range, just where you can begin to understand a bit of advice, but still very early in that course of what's going to be a huge career. What would you whisper to a young version of you then if you had that minute?
So young Paveway, right? First, hit your target so you don't get called Paveway. No. I think what I would what
I've
I would
heard some
tell
bad
him.
call signs, man, and that is not a bad one, so I wouldn't complain too much. Okay.
Okay. What I would tell young Paveway is every opportunity put in front of you, find the goodness in it, right? Oftentimes I look back on my career and I had doors open and forks in the road, and I thought one was a bad decision and one was a good decision in that binary black and white. Both were good decisions um, in hindsight, right? And you don't play the what if game. I tend to think as a mission planner, where if I do X, Y will happen. Sometimes you don't know if you choose X what Y looks like, and if you chose a different path. So I would tell them not to stress, just enjoy the ride. And if life throws you a curveball, wait in your back foot and hit it out of the park. Right? I think those are some advices that I would give, and I would go back and tell them, as much as you love medicine, you made the right decision. You made the right decision getting into this flying business. I think I often ponder that late at night what life would look like, but you can't play that game or else it's just going to eat you up. I would go back and tell them you made the right decision.
Yeah. I like it, man. That's really good. You know what? I want to ask one more thing as well, because what you answered there just connected with something that I've been thinking a bit about recently too. You mentioned there, maybe some decisions feel or look like they're black and white, one's good, one's bad. In hindsight, like you said, you've looked at them and you've seen the fact that actually both of them were good. And when you learn from those lessons, they're mega too. I've been in some situations recently where I felt like both decisions were bad. And when you think about it, and when I thought about it, I've got to make a decision here that is the least worst option as well. How do you tackle a situation like that as well? Because you spoke about the one good, one bad, and then seeing both actually as good options. When it looks like something's both bad, are they both secretly good? Wearing a scuba D mask that looks bad, or is there a way to kind of process that? How would you do it as a fighter pilot?
Yeah, I think if you're presented with what first appears as two bad options, they could potentially be bad options. The first thing I would recommend is go do your homework and actually prove to yourself that they're bad options. On the surface, they might just be superficially bad, and there might be benefits and goodness in them. And I think this is where you lean on that network of yours or your mentors and talk it out, because sometimes our gut reaction isn't necessarily true. Now, on the flip side of that, if they are both bad options, you have to still maybe take the least of the bad options, like you talked about, but find the goodness in them. Find the joy somewhere. Because if you dwell on, I have to make a bad decision, thus this will all be bad, it's going to just bog you down, right? Yes, you can choose something that is bad, but if that is what solely defines your efforts and your energy from then on out, you're going to surround yourself with people that and find that you're always in a negative attitude. You have to be able to acknowledge that it was bad. I think it was a bad option. Let's find the goodness in it and move on from it. That is, Louis, that is way easier said than done, brother. That is way easier said than done. But you have to be able to approach it with that kind of attitude. And over time, hopefully it gets good. But again, I'm throwing advice out there that I know is not easy.
Yeah, for sure, man. Well, you know what? I've never seen a truly bad decision or one that was like that or seemed like that never not turn out at least somewhere down the line to end up looking like a good thing or at least a lesson learned. So I think that's our round off right there, man. I can see why you are in the position you are. I can see why you're mentoring people and you're definitely the right person for the job. So I appreciate obviously all the time today. I'd love to get into the shameless plug. Now, I know that this one is kind of an interesting one for people in the forces. They don't have like a business to promote and stuff too. They just have the Air Force and the Academy and things like this too. But generally, if you had like a couple of minutes to promote anything that you believe in or want people to take a look at, whether that is the Air Force, anything of your own, or just some essential reading, or just any kind of like a pitch in into any kind of a fight you're passionate about too, where can we do some more research or go from this podcast and get a bit more of Paveway or whatever you want us to get more of?
Yeah, Louis, first off, I just want to say thanks for setting up the Talk4 podcast. I think you're absolutely crushing it. And it's one of my resources that I listen to quite often just to hear perspectives and insights from some of the top names in the industry, whatever that industry is. So that's one of my elevator pitches for you, because I think it's not just the Talk4 podcast, but just the podcast game in nature, as well as reading out there. I think that's how we continue to get sharper and know what's going on. So that's one bit of advice I would say. The other one is serve your country, right? I think often when we say serve your country and serve this nation, it looks like join the military. There are infinite amount of ways to make this nation better, whether that is you're volunteering in your community, you're volunteering at the state, federal level, the State Department, nonprofits. There are thousands and thousands upon ways to help serve this country and make it better for people out there that need it. Often, and as a military member, I think the first one that comes to mind very often is serving in the military, and I'm a huge proponent for that. I'll talk anyone's ear off about attending the Air Force Academy and why it's far, far above West Point and Annapolis. Go Falcons, right? Why I think it's the best school out there. But I just want to be on a team of winners. And that team to me looks like people that are out there trying to make it better for their nation and their community, because that's how we, as this American dream, make it better, right? I think that's what the founders intended. And that's my elevator pitch. Serve your country, whether and what that looks like, I don't care. It can be in a billion different ways, but serve your country.
Great stuff. Paveway, very proud, man. I appreciate the kind words, but also just want to thank you for your service too. You've done a fantastic job. Everything you're doing right now is pitching into a much bigger fight than your own one, but you've crushed it on all fronts and you will continue to do so. I have no doubt about it. You've been a pleasure to host today, and just want to say a huge thanks for being on the show. It's been great.
Louis, it's been awesome, man. Keep crushing it. I know you said this is 164. I expect to see quad digits here very soon. So keep pushing hard. All right. Thank you.
I certainly will. Thank you guys for listening. This was episode 164. If you'd like to listen to the past episodes, go and have a look at the channel. And if you'd like to listen in for the future ones as well, make sure to hit that subscribe button and spread some love by leaving a like and a comment. See you in the next one. Cheers.